Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a truly wild era in American history, the California Gold Rush. Now you probably know the classic Manifest Destiny myth, right? The lone guy heading west with a pan, striking it rich, living the American dream. But what actually happens when literally hundreds of thousands of people suddenly descend on one place, looking for instant wealth? Let's peel back the layers of that mythology and look at the complex and honestly pretty dark reality of what went down.
So it all really boils down to this central question. Was the gold rush actually a golden ticket of boundless opportunity? Or was it, well, a tragedy in disguise? Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The Gold Rush Illusion and the Dream of Easy Wealth. It all kicked off in January 1848. A carpenter named James W. Marshall accidentally spots some glittering flakes in the American River at Coloma, California. And get this for a stroke of historical irony. This happens just 9 days before the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo officially transfers California from Mexico to the U.S. Mexico basically just handed over land holding one of the greatest mineral fortunes in human history. Once President Polk confirmed the goal to Congress that December, the floodgates absolutely opened. But just getting to California? Man, it was a massive ordeal. Migrants faced 3 pretty brutal choices. Step 1. Travel overland via the California Trail. It was the cheapest option, sure, but it meant months of grueling, dangerous travel across deserts and the Sierra Nevada. Step 2. Sail all the way around South America via Cape Horn. Relatively safe, but it took an agonizing 5 to 8 months. Or Step 3, the Panama shortcut. It was the fastest route, but you had to cross the isthmus by land, and the risk of catching severe, deadly diseases like cholera or yellow fever was incredibly high before you could even sail up the Pacific coast.
But despite those harrowing journeys, people still came. In 1849 alone, an astonishing 90,000 people poured into California. That sudden, massive influx is exactly why these migrants became known as the 49ers. By 1855, we're talking about over 300,000 migrants arriving from literally all over the globe, the eastern U.S., Latin America, Europe, China, Australia. Just a sheer, unbelievable scale of migration.
Section 2. Merchants Boom, Miners Bust. The Reality of Gold Rush Economics. Which begs the question, who actually got rich? I mean, with hundreds of thousands of people rushing in and gold literally in the rivers, surely everyone made a fortune, right? Well, the historical record tells a totally different story. As the easy surface deposits were scooped up, finding gold became incredibly difficult. The harsh truth is that most lone prospectors absolutely did not strike it rich.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast between who was doing the work and who was making the money. On the left, you've got your everyday miner, exhausted and basically going broke from insane inflation. To put this in perspective, a single egg in a mining camp could cost $1. That's roughly 30 to 40 bucks today, just for one egg. A simple meal could eat up a week's wages. On the right, though, are the real winners, the merchants. The people who consistently made fortunes were the suppliers. Take Samuel Brannan. He was a storekeeper who cleverly bought up all the mining supplies in the area before publicly announcing the gold rush. He made an absolute killing selling shovels and pans. Or Levi Strauss, who got rich selling durable denim work pants. The merchants boomed while the everyday miners busted.
But make no mistake, massive wealth was being generated. Look at this figure, $2 billion. That's the estimated value of the gold pulled out between 1848 and 1855. And remember, that is in 19th century dollars. It is a staggering amount of wealth yanked straight out of the earth. But seeing a number like that forces us to pivot and ask, at what cost?
Section 3. The tragic human cost. Displacement, racism, and survival.
The wealth we just talked about came with utterly devastating consequences for the marginalized groups already living in California. Take a look right here. In 1845, the indigenous population of California was estimated at 150,000. Just 10 years later, by 1855, it had plummeted to fewer than 30,000. That is a catastrophic population collapse.
And this wasn't just a tragic byproduct of migration. It was systematic. Historians assess this period as a state-sponsored genocide. The California legislature actually provided funding for military campaigns and militias that were specifically directed against Native peoples. That staggering drop in population was driven by direct massacres, enslavement, forced labor, and the deliberate destruction of food sources, which led to rampant starvation and disease. It's an incredibly sobering reality.
The era also aggressively codified inequality across multiple other groups.
First, despite the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo promising them property rights and citizenship, Mexican Californios, or Californios, were systematically stripped of their land through legal manipulation, squatting, and sheer violence. Second, you have the 1850 foreign miners tax, which was specifically legislated to drive Latin American and Chinese miners out of the goldfields altogether. And finally, the thousands of Chinese immigrants who arrived faced such intense racism, violence, and discriminatory taxes that their experience directly foreshadowed the infamous Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And this brilliantly illustrates how the immense wealth of a few was inextricably linked to the suffering of many.
Section 4. Washing away the land. The industrialization of destruction.
It wasn't just people paying the price either. The environment itself became a major victim. The hunt for gold escalated into a massive industrial machine incredibly fast. Just follow this timeline. In 1848, it started with simple panning, swirling dirt in a pan to separate the heavy gold. By 1849, small groups upgraded to wooden cradles and rockers to sift larger volumes. By 1850, they scaled up to the long tom, basically an elongated sluice box for river sediment. But by the early 1850s, all that easy surface gold was gone. And that brings us to the terrifying efficiency of hydraulic mining.
If you aren't familiar, hydraulic mining involved corporate enterprises deploying these massive, high-pressure water jets to literally blast entire hillsides away, just washing them right off the map. Sure, it was enormously productive for extracting gold, but it was catastrophically destructive to the local ecosystem. Mountains were completely leveled, and unbelievable amounts of mud and debris choked the waterways.
So the crucial point is that this level of environmental destruction eventually hit a breaking point. All that debris from the hydraulic blasts caused massive, catastrophic flooding in the farmlands downstream. It turned into this bitter, huge clash between corporate mining operations and local agriculture. Ultimately, this led to the 1884 Sawyer decision, which finally banned the practice. It was a huge deal, setting an ecological precedent for large-scale extraction that would shape American industry for generations.
Section 5. Statehood and National Crisis. The political fallout of rapid expansion.
Let's move to and see how this builds politically. Because the sheer speed of all this wealth and migration didn't just transform the local landscape, it threw the entire nation into total chaos. The timeline here is so incredibly compressed. The U.S. acquires the territory in February 1848. The president confirms the gold that December. 90,000 people flood in during 1849, and by September 9, 1850, California is officially admitted to the Union.
That kind of rapid timeline was totally unprecedented. California completely bypassed the territorial phase and was fast-tracked to statehood almost overnight. But here's the kicker. It was admitted as a free state. By doing that, it deeply disrupted the fragile balance of power between slave and free states in Congress. So the gold rush didn't just build a new economy out west, it threw gasoline on the national debate over slavery, directly accelerating the tensions that would soon explode into the American Civil War.
Which leaves us with one final, provocative question. Who truly paid the price for America's golden mythology? We've seen how the rush created a multicultural society, but under deeply unequal conditions. It stimulated the transcontinental railroad and cemented the mythology of westward fortune. But while a handful of merchants and corporations walked away with immense wealth, the ultimate bill was paid by marginalized groups, indigenous populations, and the natural landscape itself. It's a complex, dramatic story of greed and transformation that is still shaping our world today. Thanks for joining me to unpack it.